This is Capital Ideas TV. Coming up, Building Out Blockchain, featuring Blockchain Revolution co-author Alex Tapscott, GMP Capital CEO Harris Fricker, the head of eXeBlock, scaling up blockchain applications, and the CEO of Leonovus, signing up with a big bank. Hello and welcome to Capital Ideas TV. I'm Mark Bunting. With each passing day, blockchain continues to gain credibility as the transactional platform of the future. But that's not the only story. The technology's biggest backers see it not just as a way to do business, but as the foundation for a new internet economy. Blockchain booster Don Tapscott recently explained to us what makes this technology so transformational.
For the first time ever, we not only have an internet of information, we now have an internet of value, where anything of value from money to votes to music can be stored, managed, transacted in a secure and private way. And trust is not achieved by a big intermediary, it's achieved by cryptography and by some clever code. So that's why Alex, my son Alex, and I call it the trust protocol. Trust is native to the medium.
McKinsey & Company recently published a report on blockchain's coming impact. And in a word, it's a doozy, especially for financial services firms. McKinsey quantified 7 key uses big banks will have for blockchain and the cost savings they can expect. The largest by far is cross-border business-to-business payments processing at upwards of $60 billion. Blockchain's lower costs and faster deliveries are what makes such a big difference. Trade financing, anti-money laundering management, and identity fraud prevention are the other major benefits of blockchain. As a result, financial services firms are singing a familiar refrain when it comes to blockchain. If you can't beat them, join them. Just take a look at this chart. Research firm IT Group estimates financial institutions invested $75 million in blockchain technology in 2015. By 2019, they're expected to spend more than 5 times that amount, roughly $400 million. Trade execution and settlement, contract regulation, and supply chain management are just a few of the applications that financial industry titans see for blockchain. A few weeks ago, we interviewed Alex Tapscott, the co-author of Blockchain Revolution and the CEO of eXeBlock Global. Since then, the company has abandoned plans to raise $100 million and go public. That's after Forbes reported eXeBlock made some false claims about its advisors. eXeBlock says we're a young company and we've stumbled and we'll try to rebuild trust with those that we've disappointed. But they remain as confident and excited about blockchain as ever. And that's where we pick up the story with Alex Tapscott talking to our contributor Genevieve Roch-Decter about blockchain and Bitcoin.
How can you explain blockchain and its utility and its value in a really simple manner so that people who may not know about it can understand?
Sure. The simplest way to think about blockchain is as the second generation of the internet. So for 30 years, we've had the internet of information. It's changed information industries like media, communications, search, but it actually hasn't had as big an impact on value, transactions, how we do business than a lot of people thought, because the internet is an information protocol. It's not a value protocol. And when you send something with the internet, you can send the same copy of it to someone else, which is okay if it's an email, but it's not so great if that's, say, 20 bucks, right? So even with the internet's innovation, we've always had to rely on intermediaries. With blockchain, the internet's entering a second era, from an internet of information to an internet of value. And it's based on this new technology. And basically what a blockchain is a vast, global, distributed, tamper-proof database of transactions in any kind of asset that enables people to move and store and manage things that have value. So not just emails and PDFs, but stocks, bonds, titles, deeds, other kinds of assets, money, even votes in an election, peer-to-peer in a frictionless way. And what's really fascinating about blockchain is that when money and value moves over the blockchain, trust is not established by a third party like a bank. It's actually established through a combination of mass collaboration, consensus, and clever code, which is why we call blockchain the trust protocol.
What kind of businesses will simply be disrupted?
Well, that's a really good question, and the answer is every kind of business, especially any kind of value-based business. So we think of the biggest value-based industry as being financial services. And to be sure, I think blockchain will make financial services virtually unrecognizable, but it's going to change a lot of other things, and maybe some things that people don't really expect. So consider companies like Uber and Airbnb. These are part of the so-called sharing economy companies. And it's a nice notion, you know, that we all get together and we share in the value that's being created, but it's actually not true. Companies like Uber are not successful because they share. They're successful because they don't share. They aggregate, you know, excess capacity, cars, rooms in people's homes through central intermediary and resell it. Well, with blockchain, we could replace much of what Uber does using digital identity smart contracts and blockchain payment systems. So you could potentially have Uber without the Uber, or Airbnb without the Airbnb, which is interesting because when we think of technology, we think of it disrupting old legacy businesses. The sharing economy is 5 years old, and it's one of the areas that we're seeing the most kind of innovation.
Let's talk about Bitcoin for a second.
Sure.
So would you say that, you know, investors should be buying Bitcoin? Are we in the early innings of the value proposition and the value of Bitcoin?
Well, Bitcoin is an interesting and fascinating thing, honestly. The best way to think about Bitcoin is Bitcoin is like the email of blockchain. Email is the first killer app of the internet, and Bitcoin's the first killer app of blockchain. But it's not going to be the last, right? You know, when email was around in the 80s and 90s, people couldn't have, you know, foreseen cloud computing and the digital web and the mobile web and you know, big data and the sharing economy. So I think we're going to see a lot more innovation beyond Bitcoin. I think that's where most of the growth is going to happen. Having said that, you know, I think Bitcoin is an incredibly attractive and incredible technology. You know, it's a way to make payments peer-to-peer, cross-border. It's a way to store value in fungible, liquid fashion, and it functions like the US dollar of the digital asset world. You can buy anything with Bitcoin, and you can settle out of anything with Bitcoin. So the more that people start participating in this revolution, I think the more valuable Bitcoin will become.
Here's a look at the top 10 fundings for Bitcoin and blockchain startups, according to CB Insights. As of January of this year, the top funded firm in the space is Circle Internet Financial at $136 million. That's nearly 7 times what NextBlock has raised and 4 times more than number 10, Bitflyer. However, Circle started with an initial financing of just $9 million in October of 2013. Before receiving a top-up of $17 million in March of 2014. It goes to show how quickly things are progressing in the blockchain and cryptocurrency industries. Despite the massive potential of blockchain, many big banks and services firms are taking a cautious approach, but not GMP Capital. They're going all in. The CEO, Harris Fricker, was on BNN recently, and he says the blockchain revolution is inevitable. He also says capital markets need to change in order to capitalize on the transformation. He said it's increasingly not able to provide capital to the small to mid-cap market, which is where all of these new blockchain and cryptocurrency opportunities are occurring. Well, GMP is pouring resources into providing that capital. The firm has formed a dedicated blockchain team to partner with entrepreneurs and get their businesses to the public markets. CEO Harris Fricker discusses his plans for the team and the company's investment in blockchain. So Harris, what prompted you and GMP Capital, and what did you see in blockchain that made you decide we need a dedicated team to cover this and to finance companies and so on?
Yeah, so Mark, our entry was actually pretty logical. We were seeing our business being affected by technology really since 2007 when it really intensified. We saw the technological trends driving disintermediation, commoditization of parts of the business that had once been quite lucrative. So we started looking at ways to use technology to drive down cost and generate additional efficiencies, mainly in the back office. So the first one we looked at was T+3. In other words, you make the trade and then it takes 3 days and several, we counted over 38 individual physical steps that have to take place before you can settle the trade. That's about a $13 billion cost in North America annually. We then looked at things like suitability, know your client, having to pull physical files, when really these would all be very much enabled on a smart contract basis. So it was a logical thing for us to start looking at it as a way to change our business And then as I began to understand distributed ledger technology, the logic of it, the underlying cryptography of it was clearly a step change. And if the first phase of the internet was the transmission of information, we were about to enter the transmission of value, and an entire sea change brought about by that.
So you have this dedicated team now. What does a regular day look like? What are you trying to accomplish? Where are the opportunities?
So that depends on the configuration of the team. The team has a research component where we have 2 engineers who are writing research on blockchain and blockchain companies, including cryptocurrencies. Then we have 8 investment bankers who are doing nothing but blockchain and are meeting with blockchain entities, talking to companies about ICOs, RTOs, ICOs, and RTOs. So it's
lots of acronyms there.
Yeah, lots of acronyms and lots of activity. It's, I'd say, currently, not surprisingly, the market is very robust, and you have a lot of very good entrepreneurs in Toronto. Remember, this is the home of Ethereum. You've got some great universities in the area, and this is a real hotbed of creativity in the blockchain space in the Metro Toronto area, and then some other areas in Canada that are very innovative as well.
You mentioned ICOs, or initial coin offerings, or cryptocurrency offerings. In the companies that you deal with, are they often already down the road into, we're going to raise money through selling coins or tokens, and you have to convince them to say, hey, you want to come public and do an IPO instead?
We actually see that those 2 ecosystems as compatible. And the way we're coming at it is we have a technological bent, but we're experts in providing capital to small to mid-cap companies, to growth companies. So it actually marries up very well. In many instances, we're seeing companies that have done ICOs, and then we're presenting them with opportunities to add additional capital through, in some instances, an RTO or a prospectus-based offering.
Right, so a reverse takeover or an IPO.
Correct.
Right.
IPOs are currently more difficult because the regulatory terrain is still quite uncertain, both here in the United States, and it's proven very difficult to get a prospectus through the various regulatory bodies as they struggle to come up to speed with what's happening in the market.
So are the regulatory bodies under-financed? Do they not get it? What needs to change in the markets and with the regulatory agencies to smooth the waters here?
I think it's just time. This has happened. It's been around for a long time, but as with most things, adoption kind of triggers overnight. We saw the ICO curve in terms of issuance literally go parabolic in late 16, early 17. And as with any regulatory set of issues, you're making policy for the long term. So I think the regulators are striving to get their minds around it. On the token side, it's come down to, is this a utility or are you selling securities? That's really where a lot of effort is being expended. But it's interesting to note that from the capital markets perspective, Canada has been financing junior companies, mainly in the mining and oil and gas space, for decades.
Right.
Through junior capital pools, through shells, through RTOs. And we found that structure, which is very flexible, is being able to provide significant capital to early stage companies so that they can scale and build. So we've been able to coexist with the ICOs. We're waiting to see how the traditional prospectus model evolves, but in the interim, we're raising capital for great companies.
Including Hive Blockchain Technologies, which you were the lead book runner on. Yes. They raised $30 million. We had the CEO in here, Harry Puckrand. So that's a Bitcoin data miner. Then you've got the next blocks of the world, and 360 blockchain and global blockchain already public, where they're investing in blockchain-related companies. So I know it's early days, but which models look the best to you?
So I think the ecosystem is going to play out in a way that it's completely unintelligible how it's going to look even 24 months from now. And many of the smart capitalists in the space are taking almost a venture capital approach where they're saying, I need to own a basket of opportunities in a whole variety of blockchain silos. You mentioned Hive in the mining space. That's an Ethereum and other non-Bitcoin cryptocurrency miner. That's basically, because it's a miner, it has no know your client issues or any money laundering issues, and they're amassing and holding their cryptocurrency. So that's a really interesting play that the market's responded very strongly to. There are others who are creating funds that are going to invest in the ecosystem. And then there are players doing specific applications on the, let's say on Ethereum, and those applications are going to be used to build out blockchain functionality. So it's a vibrant, broad space, and really you need to be looking at everything.
Speaking of 25 years, you've been around in the markets for a while. You've seen a lot. You worked in Silicon Valley, as you told me off air. So are you excited by what's happening and all the hype surrounding it, or is there some concern as well? And can you compare what's happening in the blockchain sector to things that have happened in the past? Yeah,
this reminds me, if I had a direct comp, it would be 99 in Silicon Valley. The internet was just starting to see widespread adoption, and capital was coming into that market very, very forcefully, mainly through the VCs on Sand Hill Road. When I look at this phase, I understand the logic of it, and that's what drives it. The transmission of value is the logic, and distributed ledger technology is the enabling feature set. That's very compelling. We as a country in Canada talk ourselves till we're blue in the face about innovation and the need to originate innovators and entrepreneurs. Well, this is an incredible opportunity. We are really one of the leaders globally in the blockchain space. Ethereum was founded here. We have some great universities that are very conversant in blockchain. And we have an entrepreneurial subset here that's very, very dynamic, where people are doing some great stuff. The key is to get them funded and let them compete globally, which is what we're focused on. We're never going to tell a blockchain specialist how to write an application, but we're going to darn for sure tell them how to get it funded.
GMP Capital does have some competition in the blockchain space in Canada. The main challenge comes from RBC. RBC has partnered with JP Morgan Chase and Australia and New Zealand Banking Group to launch a payment processing network using blockchain technology. The network will allow cross-border payments to happen much faster and with fewer steps along the way. RBC has also partnered with Bank of Montreal, Mitsubishi Financial, and CGI Group on a blockchain-based trade finance platform. They recently completed the proof of concept project and are evaluating their next steps. Even the Bank of Canada is getting in on the blockchain action. It's partnered with TMX Group and Payments Canada to explore how the technology can be used to settle and clear securities transactions. We're still in the early adoption stage of the maturation curve, but the next 7 years will be a time of major growth. As blockchain regulations are clarified, its use cases increase, and early movers demonstrate benefits, the technology will go mainstream. Leonovus is one of the companies laying the groundwork for that shift. It's using blockchain to encrypt and distribute clients' files in millions of tiny pieces across many different servers. It's one of the first companies to use the technology in this way, and the market is taking notice. Shares of Leonovus have soared more than 600% since the start of September, when they traded at just 7 cents apiece. It's now one of the larger blockchain players in Canada, with a market cap of more than $100 million. A big boost came in late October when Leonova signed a proof of concept agreement with one of Canada's big 6 banks to enhance its data security. Leonova CEO Michael Gaffney explains what's next in the company's rapid growth phase. Michael, you were with us a while ago,
yes,
but it's important for those who didn't see your interview to explain your distributed storage technology and how you're bolting on blockchain and you're not using any sort of legacy system. So explain your technology.
So first of all, we take a corporation's data, a large company's data, and do what I call turning it into a digital smoothie. We take the data, we put it into a digital blender, and we disperse it across storage nodes in many locations, including their own site as well as many data centers, if you will. Okay, so that's the fundamental technology. To rebuild all that data, we put the brains of the algorithm, if you will, inside a blockchain, which further makes it more secure, if you will. So it's a very secure way to store data and to protect the algorithms that rebuild the data.
Tell us about this deal that you signed with a big 6 bank. How important is that for you?
Well, anytime you get a bank is pretty important, especially for a small company, and the fact that a bank allows us to come in and start playing around with their network and their storage is a huge endorsement for a company like ours. And we've got several other banks in the pipeline and several other large companies in the pipeline, so it's really exciting.
Is your technology uniquely suited to financial services?
No, I think it's more suited to, not that it's not suited, pardon me, it's suited to any large organization which has lots of data being captured every day, where they have compliance and regulations requiring them to keep that data for a long time.
So this is a proof of concept arrangement. Explain how that works as far as how long it takes before this company is actually giving you revenue.
So it takes us 6 to 9 months, we believe. It was faster in this case, but to get to a proof of concept. And basically all that means is the bank is going to allow us to come into their network in a closed lab environment, prove our technology, make sure that we're not a bad Trojan horse, that it works, it's effective, it does what we say it would do. And that process will last 8 to 12 weeks.
Now, you've said that blockchain essentially is an engine. There's a lot of excitement about this sector. There are a lot of potential uses, and who knows what it's going to look like 10 years from now. But how do you see it evolving?
Right. So everybody talks about the blockchain. Really what you should be saying is, what are you going to use the blockchain for? What is that engine going to do? So for us, we're focusing on the security, data storage, and compliance market for large organizations. There are many, many other applications that other companies are going to come up with in the future using the blockchain engine.
What else do you want to talk about that we haven't touched on?
I think over the next 3-4 months, you're going to see a lot more customers coming from Leonovus. We're going to have a little broader space. We'll have some government customers, I think. We'll have some transportation customers, some large big data type customers coming forward, and we'll also hopefully see some financing being packaged up with these offerings in the future too.
So you're looking to raise a bit of money in the next while?
Absolutely, absolutely. Next year, 2018, when these large customers look at the company and our balance sheet, they're going to want to see that we've got a nice balance sheet to support their investment, or if you will, taking a risk in a small company.
Here are a couple of other publicly listed Canadian blockchain companies that investors may want to keep an eye on. The first one is Vancouver-based 360 Blockchain. It trades under the ticker symbol CODE on the Canadian Securities Exchange. The company aims to provide financial services such as IPO consulting and merchant banking solutions. It has a market cap of about $13 million and recently touched an all-time high of 20 cents per share in mid-October. And now we take a look at Global Blockchain Technologies. It trades under the ticker symbol BLOC on the TSX Venture Exchange. The investment firm, formerly known as Charis Capital, offers investors a basket of blockchain-related holdings. It's focused on investing in vertically integrated cryptocurrency and blockchain companies. Global Blockchain Technologies has a market cap of about $55 million and has spiked roughly 1,500% since the start of July. And don't forget about Hive Blockchain Technologies. We interviewed the CEO, Harry Pockrent, a few weeks ago. You can watch that segment on our Capital Ideas TV YouTube page. Blockchain may have the power to disrupt financial markets, but like a smartphone, the technology is only as good as its apps. And that's where eXeBlock is devoting its time and energy. This company is developing massively scalable blockchain apps and earning a fee every time they're used. The CEO and president, Jonathan Baha'i, explains what the company is doing. Jonathan, blockchain is hot. As we know, cryptocurrencies are hot. Now, a lot of investors wonder, how do I invest in this? And this is where eXeBlock comes in. You want to help equity investors access these kinds of companies. How do you do that?
That's right. So traditionally, I mean, the blockchain space has been confined to the cryptocurrencies and whatnot in that space, and traditional markets haven't had access to it. eXeBlock is solving that problem by being able to make an offering so that traditional investors are able to access blockchain projects via the company. So we are able to marry the two and actually make something so that traditional investors will have exposure to the blockchain space.
Now, investors are getting a sense of what your company's all about. They also want to know, how do you make money? Where's the revenue coming from? when you're going to be profitable, those kinds of questions. So
Right.
explain that for us.
So eXeBlock is essentially like an incubator. We are developing decentralized applications. With each of those, we are not only creating applications which might exist on an existing blockchain, but we are creating new types of blockchain networks which are going to disrupt various industries. When we create those, however, we're going to have the capability of actually getting a piece of the transactions which take place within those blockchains. That is our primary revenue source. So this allows people who invest in eXeBlock to gain exposure in all these new blockchains that are being created by eXeBlock and be able to have ongoing revenue source that's going to be created as they proliferate into the various industries.
Is it too early to project what revenue looks like in a couple of years down the road and when you may be profitable?
It's pretty early, but the industries that we are approaching are massive industries, which blockchain, like as many of your listeners and watchers know, there's huge industries that are going to be affected by this disruptive technology. It's going to have a massive shift in terms of how people transact, and with that, of course, the blockchains that are used in those industries, which we expect some of the ones that we make with eXeBlock are going to be utilized, means huge revenues are going to be coming to the company.
Investors are interested in blockchain, as you know, cryptocurrencies. They're looking at a lot of possibilities. Make the investment case that says eXeBlock is where you want to be.
So eXeBlock is really a front runner to blockchain technology. There are some offerings out there that do things like mining coins and things like that, and that's part of what's needed in the industry, but that's really a back-end type of operation. We are at the front where we're creating the applications, the things that are going to be in people's hands, the things that people use every day, and that's where you're going to have mass adoption is really where we focus. Much of the industry, not even up until this point, has been largely in research. It's largely been in a sandbox. Nothing has really been designed for mass adoption. Our focus is in in decentralized applications, which are going to be mass adopted.
Give us a real-world example of these decentralized apps that you're talking about, these dapps.
Right. So one of the very first decentralized applications that we're working on is a 50-50 type of application. 50-50 is very common around the world, and it's used for charities and as a means of being able to raise money for good causes. So this decentralized application will run on the PurePlays blockchain, and it will allow people to have not only global access, but it'll be easy to use, it'll be white label, it'll be something that'll make it auditable so that organizations will be much easier to be able to do 50-50 draws. It's a big issue for a lot of small organizations. That's something which we're applying on the PurePlays blockchain. Beyond that, we're also using another type of application which we're creating called Freedom Ledger, which is going to allow for the on-ramping and off-ramping from fiat currencies onto digital currencies and back without people even knowing it. So the two of these combined together create something which is massively disruptive. It's going to allow people to be able to be using the blockchain, being able to have all the benefits of the transparency, the auditability, ease of use, the speed, and all without them actually without even knowing it, right? So with these two applications, which are the first premier applications which eXeBlock are developing, it's going to allow for a real world use case and something which is actually going to get into an industry where there could be mass adoption, lots of transactions, and again, this is very good news for eXeBlock.
San Francisco, London, New York, Hong Kong. Those are the kinds of cities in which you'd expect to find blockchain startups. The last place you'd look is where eXeBlock calls home. It's actually here in a fallout shelter in rural Debert, Nova Scotia. It's dubbed the Diefenbunker after Canadian Prime Minister John Diefenbaker, who commissioned it during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The 64,000 square foot underground facility was intended to shield 350 people from a chemical, biological, or nuclear attack. After falling into disrepair and changing hands a number of times, eXeBlock CEO Jonathan Baha'i purchased the facility. It's currently being refurbished for a number of different uses: tourist attraction, self-storage facility, media studio, data center, and workspace for startups. Today, roughly 50 people work in the Diefenbunker, including an accounting firm and a handful of IT and technology startups. One thing's certain, eXeBlock definitely has its competition beat on office scenery and security. From the heart of the financial district in downtown Toronto, that's our show for this week. I'm Mark Bunting. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode. And for more great investment ideas through our weekly digest and morning note, subscribe to capitalideasresearch.com. Thanks a lot for watching, and thanks for investing like a pro. We'll see you next time.